We're flipping things around here at the Tokyo Bara 23 Sneaker channel, and if I told you what that meant right now, it would defeat the purpose. So I'll tell you at the end of this video, what we'll do is we'll just jump straight into this. Bang! There's the tongues on these upcoming release of the Nike Air Jordan 4 Union. There's two. Taupe Haze and Desert Moss, and I'm laughing at the Taupe Haze because I am notorious, famous for messing up colours. I usually have an absolute no idea about even the simple colours. Basic like red, green, yellow and blue I'm just about fine with, but when you get out of those four, all things fall apart, and taupe is so far out of my wheelhouse I've got no idea what it is. I literally had to Google taupe pronunciation. I was going to call this Taupe Haze all the way through, so forgive me for my ignorance, but it's the Taupe Haze and the Desert Moss. And the first thing we want to get into is we want to have a look right there at the tongues on these guys, because that's the main feature. The second main feature comes down on the lace stays and the eyelets, especially the top part of there, but we'll start with the tongues first. And what we're talking about is what they do. So some way I'll find out on the green screen here to flip between the two so that you can see what it looks like sheathed and you can see what it looks like unsheathed. I just made those words, I didn't make those words up, but just decided to use those words right now. And what we're talking about is basically when you buy these things, here's a standard look at the tongues, and they both actually, it's one of the very few places on these two shoes where they actually have the same color coordinations going on. And when you get them, they have the tongue flapped around like this, and it says Air Jordan on there in the long thin rectangle. If I remember rightly, it's something like grey writing on a light blue taupe background. But what's going on there? This is disappointing to me. I think I've said it in the title of the video, something like, you know, getting the tongues wrong or something like that. But basically the tongue is kind of, the back end of it's been flapped around to the front and stitched on. That's kind of the key point here, is that it's been stitched on. The reason that that's the key point is because when you unstitch it, pull the threads out and then reveal what's on underneath the Union style branding on there, and that's kind of a neat thing because usually it says Flight underneath the branding on Jordan 4, so it's kind of a neat thing that it says Union down there. But the problem is that you can see the leftover of the stitches, if you know what I'm saying. So hopefully what you can see on the green screen here is that cutting through the bottom half of that Union Jordan 4 branding is the stitching sort of imprint that's left behind after the stitches have been pulled off of the shoe. And then because they've been pulled off, it means that you've kind of lost that kind of shape that you would have to it. I suppose you could flap it around again, but because it's no longer stitched on, it's going to be all loose, and it's not going to work the way it's originally designed to. And that's what my issue is basically you have to choose whether or not to have the stitching there and keep it covered, or pull the stitching off and be able to unflap it, but then you've lost that kind of signature feature that was on them in the first place. And to me, that's a bit of a loss. They could have found a more interesting way to do this, a more delicate way to do it, so that you don't have the stitching, for example, kind of the leftover scarring, if you like, of the stitching running through the bottom half of the branding. Or they find a way for you to be able to do it both, and you get to choose what you want to do with the tongues on there. So that's the main sort of design detail on the shoe. It's kind of hidden to a lot of people, to be honest. I don't think people are realizing that you have to actually unstitch the covered version, the sheathed version, to get through to the version down below, to get to the covered up Flight / Union branding that's underneath, and then the scarring that it leaves behind on the branding there on the tongue is kind of disappointing. So so we're getting into the main details of the shoe straight away. It's like we've jumped right in feet first, and I have to get to one more thing, but first I'm going to do this. This is the Nike Air Jordan 4 Union Taupe Haze and Desert Moss. This is the Tokyo Bara 23 Sneaker Channel. Tokyo Bara 23 Sneaker Channelです。毎日アップするので毎日見てください。And every single day from Tokyo, Japan, I bring content about upcoming sneaker releases, sneaker news, and sneaker reviews. And forget about everything else, just get straight back into the shoe. And I'll tell you why we're doing it like this at the end of the video. So boom, there's the other main feature on these Jordan 4s, is that top sort of waffle eyelet. Now, it's not just a waffle eyelet. And I've been asking this question for years. Literally, I've had this YouTube channel for about 2.5 years. And every time I do Jordan 4s, I ask people out there if they can tell me what that top part on the Jordan 4 lacing system is called. And I'm not talking about the waffle eyelets up high, I'm talking about the triangle that comes below it. It's a signature feature that hasn't been repeated in any other big shoe. And so as soon as you see that, you're like, Jordan 4s, yep, check, fine, know what that is, done. And that's why I'm kind of about what they've done with these guys, because they filled in that classic triangle shape up there. And not only that, but they've kind of lost the shape around the edge. But by that, what I mean is they could have filled it in black and had the shape around the edge be white, for example. They wouldn't use those two colors on such wildly colored shoes. But my point being that they could go with something to give contrast so it still looks like the triangle, but because they filled it in, it isn't the actual triangle. But instead, what they've gone with is this kind of uniform, semi-translucent color and feel to that triangle on there. And it's a big no from me. I'm old school, I'm OG style. I'm only really interested in shoes that look kind of like the OG colorways or the OG color blocking. It's okay if they're not the OG colorways. For example, Jordan 4s came out in 4 original colors, and there have been other ones that have come since then that are great looking shoes. But when they start mucking around with the materials and changing the construction and the actual build of the shoe, it's kind of like difficult for me because I'm so old school and OG on these things. So for me, this is a bit of a no. Sorry, Union, sorry, anyone else out there is clambering to get their hands on a pair of these. And speaking of clambering, you're going to have to clamber pretty hard, because I think I'm right in saying, oh golly, if I get this wrong, the Desert MOSS is dropping standard, general release, Nike and Union, of course, and Sneakers app and all that kind of stuff. But the taupe, he said with a sort of smile to the pronunciation, the taupe haze is just through Union on June the 20th is what I've read about these shoes. So you're going to really struggle to get your hands on a pair of the grey version, let's put it that way, instead of saying taupe haze. The grey version of these guys, much more limited run to try and get your hands on. But anyway, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of what they've done with the construction of these guys. It's okay to play around with the colorways and stuff, but the construction is a bit too much for me. And then if we come down from that, one of the places that is sort of a signature in Jordan 4s, and you have the choice with what you want to do on these, and there's one way and then the wrong way. And the one way is usually the midsole on Jordan 4s would have some kind of contrast between two colors going on down there. But in the case of these guys, it's all white, front and left, top and bottom, and it's a bit too chunky for me. I would have liked to have seen a second color in there to give a bit of definition against the first color. So for me, it's another sort of like, you know, I think they're trying really hard to be cool, for want of a better word, or to be innovative, or to do it in a different way. So Jordan 4, it's kind of 32 years of absolute like iconic shoes. So if you're trying to mess around with something as iconic as a Jordan 4, it's pretty hard to do. So I get what they're trying to do, but I just don't think it's kind of working out. Now here's a place to look at. Let's go have a look at the heels on these guys, and we'll start with the light blue, and it's almost like a very a very indigo purple color on there. Again, my knowledge of colors is absolutely rubbish, so I can't tell you what the color on the branding is there. But it is a Nike swoosh on there, and I don't think it's Nike Air, and it isn't a Jumpman, so it's kind of halfway between the two, if you know what I'm saying. And I had actually originally thought that maybe the heels on these guys were very similar, and they're close to similar, but to be honest, they're not really that similar at all. So, but they do have the same branding on there. It's just the coloring that's very different on the two shoes. And then a sort of signature of the shoes is a double signature. It's the hang tags, which is kind of rare on shoes these days. To get two hang tags going on. And there's one I saw. I hope I'll be able to find a picture of this, actually, now that I think about it. It might be harder than I think. But basically, the classic Jordan 4 hang tags appear to be coming on these. That was one of my big disappointments with the 2019 Bread re-release or restock for the 5th time since the OG in 1989. And I was expecting that chunky plastic hang tag on the side, and was very disappointed with a very flimsy piece of plastic, basically. But it looks like on these guys, you're going to have that chunky plastic hang tag on the side, but beside it is another collaboration hang tag to go with it, saying 1991 to 2000. and 21, I think, so 30 years, which would make this a perfect year for the Jordan 6s, I think, if I remember rightly. You know, tying it up with the Jordan 4s, but then the Jordan 4s are more iconic than Jordan 6s. Sorry, 6 heads out there, but I think we can kind of all agree on that. So basically, you know, that's a lot of the main things on there, but there is one question left. I don't think I asked it already, and it's to do with that triangle on the side that I was talking about already that fits the lace stays in there. Underneath there's a little tab, you know, that looks like a branding tab, and I think it finishes with the letters like LA or something like that. It definitely isn't ON as in union, UNION. So I was looking at it, I was like trying to work it out, trying to look through the translucent on there, and I couldn't find out and see what that actually says on the site. So I'd really be interested to find out what it says. But then it's not too far to go forward from that and actually have a look at one of the classic elements of Jordan 4s, which is that mesh on the side. And one of the things that's classic about it is what it shows underneath. And in the case of these guys, it really looks through to the midfoot and gives you a sense on the midfoot of what's going on in terms of materials and colorways. So that Jordan 4 mesh on the midfoot was kind of semi-repeated in the Jordan 5s, a little bit different in construction, but then again disappears to the world and we don't see it again. And that's what I love about, you know, classic shoes, is they had certain signature features that you just don't see again and you just don't mess with. And sorry, Union, shouldn't be messing with that lace part at the top waffle as far as I'm concerned. And then the final thing for me to do is to tell you how I flip things around. And what I'm thinking of doing is I think I'm going to flip it around, because usually what I do is sort of introduce a shoe and kind of talk about its context and then dive into explaining all the different features on it. But I thought, you know what I'm going to try for a few days, maybe in a couple of weeks, is just diving straight in like I did today, straight in, like it was within the first 20 seconds, straight in to talk about the tongues, one of the main features on there, and then right after that the triangle at the top of the laces, another main feature on there. And then instead of you know, doing a sort of glide in, a slow sort of build up to the shoe and then into the main features, we'll start with the main features and then talk about the other stuff on the shoe at the end of the video. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that, the videos over the next few days, where we just go bang right at the start and then we keep the sort of general story of the shoe stuff till the end of the video. So fingers crossed that's going to work out for me, and you can tell me that in the comments down below and tell me if this is the way you like it to be done. Very much appreciate feedback and actually acting on feedback. So if you want to do that, comments down below, please. But for now, though, it's time for me to wrap this one up. Hopefully you appreciated that flip and also the shoes. Great 2 pairs of shoes come June 20th. I think I'm shooting this video on June the 13th, and it'll probably go up on something like June the 15th, so about 5 days ahead of the drop date. A little giddy for me. Giddy is Japanese for kind of close. I prefer to be a bit further from the drop date than 5 days, but you know, them's the breaks, as they say. For now, though, it's time for me to wrap this one up. Just thank you guys for checking out the content, and I'll do that thing that I do at the end of every single video, which is remind you that I do this every single day, and that means that you are guaranteed to see me tomorrow.